Well, good evening, everyone, and welcome. This is the Black Doula Consortium 7th and closing event of the year. We appreciate that you could join us again for this very special closing event with Black mamas and women. I am Audra Jones, a member of the consortium, and our consortium, just to let you know, give you a quick little overview of our consortium. If you haven't seen our previous webinars, we want you to just, we'll talk about a recap of them and encourage you to visit the website of Black Wellness and Prosperity Center, www.blackwpc.org, to learn more about our consortium and check out the previous webinars. In June, with the support of the Center at the Sierra Health Foundation, BWPC, and the consortium partners, which consist of the Center, Blue Shield of California, Black Child Legacy Campaign, along with myself and several doula partners, Frontline Doulas and Diversity Uplift Inc., and Her Health First, we launched a new initiative, the Black Doula Consortium. And our focus is on coalition building amongst maternal health advocates, amplifying their voices along with Black moms and babies. And our goal is to promote systems, solutions, including doula support for improving health outcomes of Black mamas and babies. And so we'll talk more about, some of the things that we've shared in the past, but what we really want these events are to prioritize the issues that greatly shape our community's lives and health, and the preterm birth rate, implicit bias, mental health, maternal mortality, and infant mortality and morbidity. And every month we invite these advocates and community members to help us with these hard conversations. We've talked about SB 65, the California Omnibus Act. We've talked about SB 464, the Pregnancy and Dignity and Childbirth Act, and we encourage you to look those up so that you learn more about what those bills are about and why they were created to support the work that we're doing and work that's being done across our state, and how you can really be involved and ensure that not only were those bills passed, but they actually go into the implementation phase that will benefit our communities. And so I'm so excited because tonight, our last event is going to be one of those powerhouse events where you get to not only participate and engage, but you get to hear from some beautiful women, ladies, persons, and hear about their pregnancy and birth stories. You'll hear about some of their personal stories, and you may hear about some of their familiar stories of folks that they've engaged with and encountered and their experience. And so I want to introduce each of these ladies. So I'm going to introduce them all at once, give you a little bit of their background, and then we'll go into a conversation. First up is Monica Nelson. She's an African-American woman. And according to her own words, as an African-American woman with no children, I have always stayed informed about maternal health trends. She is very interested in learning more and being more involved with improving maternal health outcomes as a community health worker and health advocate. Regarding the importance of finding the right support persons for pregnancy journeys, she believes that it takes a special person to understand the sacred bonds of our womb health, as all of our surroundings contribute to a successful pregnancy. So you are welcome, Monica. After Monica, we'll have Sabrina Beavers, who is originally a native of Bakersfield, California. Upon her graduation from high school in 2001, she moved to Fresno to attend Cal State University, Fresno State. Sabrina graduated from Fresno State with a bachelor's degree in health science with an option in community health, and currently works as a certified health education specialist for the local Department of Public Health. As a family health advocate, group facilitator, and community outreach liaison for the Black Infant Health Program, yay to BIH. That was my first job while in college and straight out of college. I was a perinatal health educator in LA. So go BIH and go Sabrina. She actively works to bring awareness to the adverse birth outcomes of the African American community and helps to provide support to the ladies who participate. An African American woman who herself recently had an adverse birth outcome. Sabrina delivered a beautiful baby girl preterm on March 29, 2019, 5 weeks before her May 1st due date. Sabrina had all the resources and support imaginable, yet still had the experience of being discharged home, no longer pregnant, while her baby was left behind to spend time in the NICU. Sabrina's personal experience has helped her use her voice to advocate on behalf of the mothers she serves and navigate them through the foreign experience of giving birth preterm while having a newborn in the NICU. Welcome, Sabrina, everyone. Next up, we have Nia Hodge. Nia is a Fresno native, experiencing most of her life in the southwest area of Fresno. She is a mother to 5 children and a grandmother to 12 grandchildren. Nia is very active within the community as an entrepreneur, a BWPC Community Advisory Council member, and founder of the Hive Foundation. The Hive is a product of her experience from the loss of her beloved child and granddaughter in 2017. Nia remains a resounding voice in the community, sending a message of urgency and importance to the risk of several factors such as location, air quality, and the impacts these have on individuals with asthma. Using the lessons she's learned from the loss of her daughter and granddaughter, Nia published a novel in 2019 entitled Beauty in Brokenness, in which she details the ways to find beauty in life through self-awareness and personal healing. So without further ado, welcome Nia and all of these beautiful sisters to our conversation. Thank you all for being here, and I look forward to a great dialogue throughout this evening with you. So first up, we're going to have Monica, and we have these beautiful stories that are going to pop up, and I'll tell you a little bit about, I'll come back and give you the authors or the illustrators' name and information. We'll be sure to share that or drop that in the chat. So, Monica. Let me help with the pinning. Hold on, you all. Hold on. Okay. All right. Thank you, Monica. So you want to share a little bit about the illustration, and then we'll have some dialogue, you and I?
Absolutely. Good evening, everyone, and thank you so much for inviting me to today's doula webinar. As Adoja said, I have always been very fascinated with the different styles pertaining to birthing plans. As an African-American woman who does not have children, I am currently in the process of family planning. And when I look at the historical context of my mother and my aunts and other women in my family, they primarily started having their children in their late teens and mid-20s. So not to completely disclose my age, I'm in my late 30s, and I've always found it to be very important that I'm staying up to date with health trends. Something that I've always known is that for Black women in particular, due to some of the representation that is not always shown in the medical field, it has been difficult for us to be able to advocate for ourselves in these vulnerable times while delivering. And I found myself very fascinated in my time in being in California for the past decade. I originally relocated to Sacramento from San Diego. And that was really the first time that I was introduced into the work around Black doulas. I've always been a strong community advocate. I currently work for a health and wellness organization and took a lot of pride in being able to share my story throughout the years as I continue to learn more and use that in my personal work. So something that I just wanted to share is that being transparent, childbirth itself is very terrifying for me. And I think knowing a lot in my own field, it's important to have this resource and be able to promote it and share it with others so that we as Black women know we are not alone. We are in this fight together. And we have a lot of resources historically through our community and knowing that it takes a village to raise a child, and knowing that we have that opportunity to plan in advance and give ourselves the best possible birth outcome. So with that, I will turn it back to Joja and would love to discuss this further. Thank you.
Yeah, so thank you so much, Monica. Let me say, one, thank you for being a willing participant and coming and sharing your story and really speaking your truth. And so I want to dive into that. I'm not that much older than you, surprisingly, even though I think your age is listed there. My daughter is a few months shy of the same age. So I was a teen mom. And so I want to talk a little bit more about what you mentioned as your fear of pregnancy and birthing. And I want to kind of delve into that because looking at your story, we'll bring it back up. You said you have a desire to become a mother, but you have some fears and apprehensions. Let's talk there and then explore that a little.
Absolutely. So, I think growing up, I've always recognized that I've had a small version of depression. And I know that when you're looking at mental health, it's really important to be mindful of medications you may be taking upon childbirth, as well as medications that you should be speaking with your doctor and gynecologist about prior to becoming pregnant.
Right.
And so the birth plan, I think in itself is something that would ultimately reduce a lot of my fears. But quite frankly, just being in labor for several hours, I always gauge it from about 8 to 12 from when I'm listening to other mothers, that type of vulnerability and how you're strong with your own body to be able to handle contractions and delivery and your breathing method. I always kind of think the worst in a case like that where you don't necessarily have control over the pain you're going through, even though I know it's also a very euphoric and beautiful experience. So those are some of the fears I have when looking at the labor itself. But I also have concerns around postpartum depression because that's something that we obviously can't always control in advance, but it's important that both myself and my partner are aware that that could be a potential, and making sure I have support after delivery as well.
Absolutely. I'm in total agreement with everything that you shared. What I will say about the first, some of what you shared is that we have to take into consideration every pregnancy is different, right? So even though some folks are in labor for 8 to 12 hours, some folks have been in labor for days, that does not have to be your story, right? And so it's really critical. And I love how BWPC, and I'll say Black Wellness and Prosperity Center, has called upon women to share their stories, their pregnancy and birth stories, and their desire for pregnancy, because it allows us to explore these topics and really delve into preconception planning, how, like you said, speaking with your physician, whether you're speaking with your OB-GYN, if you have a mental health care professional that you work with, whether you're on meds or not, to really explore and delve into those conversations on what you can do to prepare yourself mentally as well as physically. I think what happens is it is good for us to find those providers that we really can talk with, well, that we feel comfortable with. And I'm one that's pretty big on and having that conversation, even with clinicians, to remind them that if I'm coming to you and I have to lay there bare, like naked, I'm trusting you with my care. So me being able to ask you questions and get, those real answers is important to me, because I'm entrusting you based upon your period of education as you've gone through school to achieve this position, as well as that Hippocratic oath that you took. And so I'm giving you respect. I'm asking for the same. I'm asking you not to lump me into a basket of who you perceive I am as a Black woman, because maybe I didn't come in here in a suit. maybe I didn't come in here. I might have had my hair in braids. Some of our sisters will talk about that. You know, folks may get mad at me, but I came in here with a bonnet. You know, don't make those assumptions, you know, because of what you see. We have to remove that from the fact that I'm here for medical attention, advice, and health care. And so that's what's critical. So I like that you have brought those things up, because when I hear young women, especially young Black women, saying they're fearful of having children, I'm always concerned, because I remember growing up, it was always like, we're going to get married, have children, have this home, have this big thing. I didn't have a fear of me or my child not surviving. But the reality is, for Black people in America, that is what our situation very well can be. And so I think this is why it's critical for us to wrap our arms around each other, link together, share these stories, and look at ways in which we identify and strategize on, you know, changing that narrative as much as possible. So I want to honor what you have shared, and I'm glad that you're sharing that. You mentioned postpartum depression, right? We don't get to depict that, but you know, because you don't know in advance. But I'm glad that you're able to think about that in advance because of your own history with your mental health. So might I ask, do you see a therapist now, or?
I currently do.
Mhm.
I currently do. And
Okay.
I think, again, it's been really helpful as I'm
Right.
currently family planning, to be able to discuss that openly.
Absolutely. I have one too. I encourage everyone in America, especially Black
Mhm.
people, to get a therapist. I don't think you could be in America as a Black person and not have a therapist.
2 years ago, you'd never hear me admit it.
Listen, and we need to help one another, especially even through this pandemic. If you don't have a therapist, I mean, there is a scarcity sometimes, especially for Black folks, to have the funding to support that. But you know, they have so many groups that are out there that offer either, you know, supportive groups where you can get into a mental health group. We've been, you know, looking and exploring that for, especially for pregnant moms, where they're offering free support groups to have this dialogue and type of discussion to kind of come together. And then you look for the individual. So I'm very proud of you, and glad that you're able to do that and feel comfortable enough to share that. But you're right. Most of us wouldn't have been willing to share. We have a therapist. And I'm not talking about going to church. I'm talking about, if you know, in your church, you believe, you still need a therapist. The pastor is not your therapist. You know, the first lady is not your therapist. And we have to really be very clear with that.
Absolutely.
I wanted to talk to, so you're aware of what a doula is, right?
I am.
Okay. And so it looks like you have in your story that you know, looking for the support of a doula to help prepare you. Have you done any of that research as yet, even to speak with doulas, or, you know, kind of meet with some of us that are doing the work?
So at this time, I actually haven't. And I think that's what's so powerful about these webinars. I'm fairly new to Sacramento, and I know we have women here across the board in California. So anytime I'm in a new city, it's going to be helpful for me to learn what those resources are, because they vary. So at this time, I don't have a doula, but I am very interested in finding one, as it never crossed my mind that the doulas can support you prior to
Right.
the birth. I kind of always thought of it more as during the delivery and afterwards, but knowing that I can also work with a doula to create my birthing plan is something that's very helpful to hear.
Absolutely. And you know, you're doing your research, you're finding out who the doulas are in your community, so that when the time comes, you have kind of really searched out and seen who's available, because you never know their schedule, their clientele. So it's good to find you several that you can work with, and good to get into the birthing community, so that you can, you know, kind of do the research, hear these stories. You might find out that there are midwife programs, like the Victoria Project has been giving scholarships for women to go to birthing centers and have a midwife. And so there's so much more to explore in that. And I really, as we kind of wind down our conversation and we'll come back, I love what you had on your story that says it takes a special person to understand the sacred bond of our womb health. And for me, that goes back to a couple of things. One, you mentioned that your family had their babies in their 20s. And so I'm excited that you're not bound by the fact that you're beyond that age, and that you still can birth and deliver, and you still can have a great and healthy outcome. But also that you acknowledge the fact that, womb health and care is special. It's a creative process that we have to honor. We've always honored that in our communities. It's just that we have had all of these health, the trauma to our wombs, right? We've had the trauma to our mental. We've had the trauma amongst our children, amongst our men, amongst our families. And so that has done a tremendous damage on our wombs. Even the environmental exposure, we look at beauty and we look at the products we use that can have impact on, the development of fibroids and things of that nature. And it has yet to still be determined fully how those things come about. So, what you're doing now is super critical, even to have
Thank you.
yeah, thank you. Even to have we have a group called When 1000 Grandmothers Pray, and you have these grandmothers that come around to get involved in our infant and maternal mortality work, but to really pray over the womb and look at the sacredness of our womb, and to really encourage and wrap their arms around mothers who have had losses, mothers who, whose children, they had a healthy outcome, mothers that didn't have the best outcome, but still want to continue on the journey. And so I applaud you.
Thank you.
And I thank you for being here with us. Anything else you want to share before we go to our next, and then we'll come back?
Well, it is just a pleasure to be here. And I think closing words, just kind of highlighting your final statements, is that when I look at womb health, it is a holistic view. And so that's just something that I will say is exciting and helps to alleviate some of my fears, because I do know that just the first part of asking for help and seeking a mental health specialist, having someone to speak to. I said earlier, you probably wouldn't hear me admit that out loud a few years ago. And I think it's really important to recognize when carrying a baby that they can feel your energy. And that is so important. And so making sure in the family planning process, I'm being mindful of who I'm allowing in my space, no matter how difficult that may be. Because I do think there is a historic context of some of those fears of asking for help, fears of being vulnerable. But, the more positivity you can bring to your womb before, during, and after, your baby feels that energy. So I'm just, again, excited to continue to learn more. I personally have considered birthing centers instead of a hospital, because I think having a little more one-on-one care without a mentality around rushing your pregnancy. I think, my best friend actually told me it made her feel so much more relaxed when she had her son, her only child at this point. Just knowing she wasn't feeling rushed and had that opportunity to ease into her first labor.
Yeah,
So,
absolutely. Thank you. And I wanted just to
thank
share
you.
real quick. Dr. James put in the chat, thank you for sharing about your fears, because that fear of survival can also affect your mental health while pregnant and after childbirth. So that is critical. That's why it is good for us to have these conversations and explore that and look at how we could change, the mindset around it, and how you get prepared to welcome, not ignore, because this is the important part of this conversation, is that we can't ignore the realities of what's happening to women in our community, our families, Black women, Black families, Black babies. But if we highlight and talk about it, then we can look to see how we can really fix it and change it. So thank you, Monica. We'll be coming back for more dialogue shortly.
Thank you.
All right. Talk with you soon. All right. Up next, I think we're going to share the next story. And I'll give you all a minute to take a look at this story of Sabrina and Destiny. Go back, go back, go back, go back. Oh, you're going through pictures. Okay. You can pull a story back up. I don't think they had a chance to read that unless they were like super readers, super quick readers. I'm a good one, but can we bring Sabrina and Destiny's story back for just a few seconds? I don't know how to do it. Otherwise, I would. If not, we'll pull it back up. Let me see if I can probably share. Oh, I got it. I think. Did it come up? No.
Yes.
Oh, it did?
Yeah.
Was it big? Was it big?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Thank you. Okay, good. You got it. So this is Sabrina and Destiny's story, you all. Take a look at this for a minute and we'll let Sabrina open up and dialogue, but she's sharing her first pregnancy journey here. Okay. So, Sabrina, I'm gonna let you open up and then I'll pop in for dialogue.
All righty. Well, thank you everyone for wanting to be here and participate and hear our stories. It's an honor to be able to tell the experience that I had as a first-time pregnant, first-time mom. For the most part, my pregnancy journey was wonderful, uneventful for the most part. I didn't have any morning sickness. I was at my healthiest. Well, I'm pretty healthy in general, but I had just started working out prior to finding out I was pregnant again consistently. So I was doing well, eating healthy, hydrated. Everything was going good at my job. Of course, my day job, I support African-American pregnant women. So it was a surprise when I found out I was pregnant. My journey while pregnant, I had a lot of support. I secured my doula immediately because I do work with her professionally. So I made sure to have her as my doula. I early prenatal care, went to most of my prenatal appointments if they weren't canceled by my doctor, and continued to, not only support women, but also got support from the women that I worked with, as well as our participants. They were on a part of my pregnancy journey as well. So my last day of work, preparing for me to go on maternity leave, my water broke. Of course, I was surprised because no one is expecting their water to break 5 weeks prior to delivering. I knew what was happening, so I wasn't too out of sorts as far as what was going on. Of course, I was surprised and nervous, but I took it, I stayed calm because I wanted to make sure that if anything, my baby came into the world peaceful, even if it was earlier than expected. My doula was not available because, of course, she was traveling across the country to go support her daughter-in-law, who was also pregnant. And of course, it wasn't expected I was supposed to deliver during that time. So that wasn't a surprise. My backup doula was available, but not immediately. But my coworker was with me during my delivery. She ended up becoming my stand-in doula. My mom was there. My baby girl came into the world. And for the most part was okay. She was underweight. She had to spend, at that particular time, I wasn't for sure how long she would stay in the NICU, but she ended up staying in the NICU for 10 days, mainly just to gain weight, to build her ability to suck and swallow. And then we started our journey as me being new mom and her being here earthside. So I think that's pretty much it. We can start the discussion.
I have so much, I think, but I'm not going to do so much. Hold on one second. Let me make sure I add you too. Hold on. Kind of move this around, but let me see. Let me get back to you. Yes, 1 second, Sabrina. All right. Okay. So yeah, and looking at your story, and you gave the shortened version, and I can understand that because it's a lot to think back through. Kind of want to start about these prenatal appointments that got canceled and not are you saying they weren't rescheduled?
Mm-mm. So for those that have yet to have children, there's a prenatal schedule that most medical providers go by. Once you find out you're pregnant, the first, you have a lot of appointments in the beginning, at least within the first 2 weeks, just to confirm pregnancy and all of that. And then after, pregnancy is confirmed, lab work is done, and, they find out your overall health and what's going on with you. You meet with them once a month during the first trimester, going in through most of the second trimester. Then towards the end of the second trimester, you go twice a month. And then by going into your third trimester, and then usually by the time you get to your last month, you should be going every week until you deliver. So I remember one time I was rushing to get an appointment because I was getting off of work and trying to get to my appointment. I was running a little behind. But then when I got there, I found out that my appointment had been canceled. My doctor had to be called in to do an emergency C-section, so her office was responsible for getting in contact with me. I didn't get any messages. They called my home phone, which on my profile, it states for them to call my cell phone. I don't know why they called the house phone. I wasn't there. I was at work. So being at that point, I think I was like 6 months pregnant, rushing to get to my appointment. That's a lot of stress already. And then getting there and finding out that my appointment had been canceled. And of course, when I talked to her staff to see if it would be rescheduled, there wasn't an immediate answer. They were like, oh, well, the doctor will get in touch with you to reschedule.
The doctor will get in touch with you to reschedule. That's rarely the case. Generally, the staff does the scheduling. So that's very interesting. And that happened more than once, more than twice?
It happened at least two, I think, about, if I remember, 2 times for sure.
And there was no like nurse practitioner or anyone else that could have seen you? Did you feel like you needed to be seen? Would you have preferred to have been seen?
I would have preferred to have been seen. Now, whether or not I needed to be.
I mean, like anything, you saw any complications, but it is imperative. I mean, I think especially for us, did you, what, did they ever mention like you had any other conditions that would have been of concern?
The only condition that I had, which was under control, was I have hyperactive thyroid due to Graves' disease.
Okay.
But it was under control. I have an endocrinologist that I was, working with. So, and at that point, I think I was being weaned down from the medication. So everything was for the most part, fine from what I
Yeah.
was told.
But still, I mean, there's not just to me a respect factor, but there's also just especially when it comes to pregnancy, it's just a vast concern to be seen, especially if it's like every other month or, once a month, that's not a frequent, meeting time. And I do understand the schedule, but, I think too, did you feel like you needed to change providers, or you were still comfortable with seeing the same provider? Because I know sometimes we have a fear of changing that, or they make it very difficult to make the change.
I didn't feel uncomfortable with her, considering that she was my gynecologist. So I've been dealing with her for years. So I didn't feel the need to change doctors. Of course, since then I have, but at the time I didn't feel the need to change doctors. I was trying to be as understanding as possible, even though I was frustrated. I mean, an emergency is an emergency, but they could have done a better job at, communicating with me, considering that, I was rushing to get there. And I had taken time off of work to get to the appointment.
Right, which is critical. I'm trying to see if they can see both of us on the screen. I'm not sure if it's not showing. Monica, Nia, can you see us both on the screen? Okay. Kata? Don't scare me. Okay. I got so much to explore. We the time is so limited sometimes. I'm glad. Okay, so your doula, I'm glad she has some backup, but it appears that in your situation, you couldn't even get to her because of your early pregnancy, and the backups were busy with their clients, but they did communicate with you via text and phone. So that's pretty good. But grateful for your coworker who stepped in to become your acting doula. How did that work?
It was weird. I was comfortable with her because, I mean, outside of work, we are friends. So she was actually the first person I told at work that I was pregnant.
Okay.
So she was rocking with me on my pregnancy journey, not only just personally, but also professionally. She was also my quote unquote case manager for Black Infant Health. Yes, I did participate in Black Infant Health, even though I worked there.
Yes, as you should, because you're still a Black woman, a mother, and you were going to have a Black infant. So
yes, so I sat in group. I also facilitated group whenever I had to step in for staff, but for the most part, I was a participant. So it was nice to have her there. I was comfortable with her. She, even though she doesn't have the formal training, she knew enough to get me through most of it. Reminding me of my breathing, trying to relax, open up my pelvis. So yes, I couldn't move. Because I was bound to the bed, because they were concerned about my daughter's heart rate varying. Of course, at the time I didn't know it was a girl because I was waiting until I delivered to find out sex of baby. So I couldn't get up and walk. Like my whole birth plan was blown up.
Right. And you weren't expecting. Now, because we have to have these conversations because part of our role as doulas is to decrease the C-section rate, especially if it's not medically necessary. So was that a conversation that you had with your provider? Because if I'm reading correctly, you had a C-section, right?
No, I delivered vaginally.
Oh, you said no, not concerning enough for them to mention a C-section.
Yeah. So while I was in labor,
but they didn't check your dilation. So, okay, let's talk about that.
Yeah. So while I was in labor, my contractions were coming very fast and very hard. My delivery was only 4 hours.
Okay.
So with each contraction, it was, it was intense, and it kept getting intense. My goal was to deliver without any pain medication, but I did, do my best to try to manage my pain, considering that I couldn't do what I, as far as
Yeah.
finding other ways to distract
Yeah.
myself.
Right.
So I was hip swaying, changing positions, but their concern was her heart rate. So her heart rate kept varying. Of course, now, because retrospectively, hindsight is always 2020. Um, her heart rate varying was normal, because each time I had a contraction, her heart rate would dip a little bit, but then of course, once the contraction was over, it would bounce back to normal. But they made it seem as if, of course, me being a first-time mom, first-time pregnant, I didn't, if it wasn't for the fact that I had the knowledge that I had, I wouldn't be surprised why other mothers end up having a C-section, because they're like, okay, you're saying that my baby's heart rate is varying.
Yeah.
Just do what you got to do to get the baby out. But I knew better. So even though they were telling me that her heart rate kept varying, which is usually, she was coming down the birth canal.
Right.
So their ability to detect her heart rate, was diminishing, because she's coming down, she's coming out, of course. And with each contraction, your body's pushing to push baby down. So I remember that the nurse had mentioned, because they did have to give me oxygen, because they're like, well, if we give you oxygen, it'll help to provide more oxygen to the baby, and this will help as far as, the heart rate. So in the throes of labor, the nurse says, I think we're going to have to do a C-section.
Mhm.
And at that point, because I refused pain medication all the way up until that point, because I was like, no, I'm going to do this naturally. That's my goal. I'm going to get one thing out of my birth plan, damn it. So, but then when she said that, it scared me. And I was like, give me an epidural.
Mhm.
So the anesthesiologist came in to do the epidural, and within 30 minutes, she came out.
Okay.
So, and that was just awesome timing. That was God. So,
Yeah.
or else the outcome would have been different.
Right. I made a note to Monica, 4 hours.
Mhm.
4 hours. Every pregnancy can be different. Though I am sorry about, a lot of things that you mentioned that, were missed. No dilation or vaginal check. I thought that's always a common situation. We have so much more to explore, but we're just going to touch on two things. So NICU experience is, breast milk. You said no one was working with you to get her to latch.
Mhm.
Your breastfeeding journey was rough. They didn't offer a lactation specialist to come in.
So after I delivered, they did offer a lactation consultant. They did provide me with the hospital grade pump. They did give me a brief explanation about how to do hand expression. I delivered at Kaiser, so they have a little card where they show you how to, express breast milk with the spoon. And they also gave me the breast pump, because of course I was being separated from my baby. Um, everyone knows that if you're not able to get out breast milk with hand expression and trying to use a pump, colostrum is very thick. So even a hospital grade pump is going to have difficulty trying to get your milk to come in. But I mean, that was the first night. And of course they encouraged me to pump every 2 hours, but I was tired. So I just delivered the baby, have a huge emotional response to the fact that I delivered early. I'm still trying to grapple with all that happened,
Right.
and my
Right.
baby's not in my room.
Right.
So excuse me.
No, that's all right. That's all right. Yeah, that's why we have these conversations. Listen, I encourage us all to share those, show forth our emotions. Many people want us to tap down our real emotions and the reality, and that is your reality. And we honor you, Sabrina. We wrap our virtual arms around you, but we send you loving comfort, because it wasn't the plan that, not only was it not the plan that you had, but it didn't sound like you got the support that would have been necessary to say, listen, take that time, and we're going to do all that we can so that you and your baby can bond.
Mhm.
So that yeah.
So, and then, the NICU, for the most part, my NICU experience was relatively good. If it wasn't for the support that I had, giving me information about, well, are they giving you donor milk? And I was like, donor milk? I didn't even know I could get donor milk.
Right.
And they're like, well, she should qualify because she's a preemie.
Right.
When I mentioned it, of course, they gave me the runaround. And then there was a instance where I did provide one day when I did come up there to visit, and it was during her morning visit. I had pumped, and I worked hard to get that milk.
Yeah.
So with the little I had, and I brought it up there for them to give to her. And I remember the day that she was being discharged, as they were doing the tests to make sure that she was okay to go home. I looked over in the area where her incubator was, and I see the cooler that I brought and the syringes with the breast milk just sitting there on the counter.
Did you ever ask them what happened?
No, I was just trying to go.
I understand and respect that. That's why, I understand and respect that. That's why last month we had my sister friend, mentee, big, great woman, founder of Mighty Little Giants, Jessica Wade, who started her organization based upon her 100+ day NICU experience. And it is to serve families like yourself, women and their families in the NICU, right? Black families, and to really highlight, because there are some horror stories even around breast milk being tampered with, being thrown out, just some things that, and conversations from nursing and medical staff that should not be had when a person is even in the NICU, a family is even in the NICU. There's just certain things that professionally you should know better than to say and do. And even your experience, I'm sorry that I'm sorry that happened, Sabrina, to you and Destiny. But I'm grateful that Destiny is here with you, Earthside. I'm grateful that you're here to share your experience, not just with us, but I'm sure you are doing that, able to help and support other moms and their families in the Black Infant Health Program. So we're going to come back, because I do want to see if we'll be able to explore your experience with the OB and the FMLA situation. And so thank you again for sharing your story. And I'm grateful that you made it through. So that being said, and you're getting hugs and love in the chat, because we do not, this is our goal, to help women not experience that trauma, but if you have, then how do we support you through the healing process of that trauma and that journey? Because our goal is to highlight and celebrate Black birthing and pregnancy, but we know our experience here the last 400 years does not always guarantee a great outcome. But we're still going to continue to fight. We're not giving up. So with that being said, I'd like to welcome our next guest, Nia Hodge, and we're going to put up her story, and we're going to explore some of that this evening. So, let me see. Removing these pins. So Nia, let me see where I find you. I'm gonna ask you just to open up and share with us a portion of your story that you'd like to explore on tonight.
Well, good evening, and it's a pleasure to be here. And like I always say, I'm telling my story from a different vantage point. And so my experience has caused me to be hyper vigilant. Although I'm a mother of 5 children, and like I've heard in all the other conversations, there is no pregnancy alike. None of those things are the same. And of course, when you become when you're having children, you don't ever think of this side of the coin, having to be the one left here to tell a story. And I know a lot of people probably think like, oh no, how do you navigate through all of this? And it's a lot. So I'll just share November the 19th this year would have made Ricky's 4th birthday. And also it was the asthma episode, which resulted in her being born by cesarean in the hospital. November 25th, Alanique succumbed to her asthma attack, the lack of oxygen to the brain. And then November 29th, Ricky did. And then December 7th, I buried them both. And so this, again, like I said, it's the 4th year anniversary. And I just kind of went through all of those milestones from November to December. And then January and February is usually me trying to recalibrate from dealing with all of the feelings that I have all over again. But I continue to show up, and I'm hyper vigilant about advocacy, because during Alanique's lifetime and during her having children and dealing with asthma and just, all of those things, navigating through, we just focused on treating symptoms, survival, like so many of us are doing, like even now. When I hear us talking about advocacy, health, mental health, planning, knowing your health physician, your healthcare physician and providers, Googling these people and researching them and advocating and using your voice, and then trying to maintain your mental health, trying to not appear or fall into stereotypes when you're trying to express yourself about what it is you're feeling about your body and all of these things. And so Alanique and Ricky transitioning has just made me hyper vigilant, and that much more, put that much more of an urgency under me to show other women how to press through, because I'm left with 4 other children. I have 4 children. Alanique left behind 3 children, a husband, brothers and sisters. And so pressing through all of that. And then again, like just literally not surviving, but learning how to thrive on the other side of not having the best outcomes. And all of us here are doing that, right? We have Monica, who is, all of the apprehensions about the things that she knows because you work firsthand with these people and you experience this. And then Sabrina having a premature baby and having them not respect the fact that I want my baby fed a certain way, that I had a plan, and you're not helping me to bring my plan to fruition. And that's the same thing with me. Like this last baby that Alanique was having was our 4th baby, and we had a plan. We had just finished celebrating, and we wanted to bring forth a healthy baby, and it all went south because of just, again, the lack of advocacy and access, and not knowing all of these things until after they happened. So that's why I'm here, and I continue to pop up when I don't feel like it sometimes.
Well, first of all, we want to pause and give a moment of silence to honor your angel, right? And then as a mom and grandma, I'm encouraged right? I'm encouraged for you.
Thank you.
I know November has to be a hard month. I've had a different experience of November, has been a hard month for our family, but I'm grateful for you showing up and being an advocate and sharing your story. Not just sharing your story, but founding an organization around your story, partnering with the Black Wellness and Prosperity Center to lift up and stand, in solidarity with Shantae and Kata and the organization and other women to say, no, I don't want this to happen to anyone else. Our plans were interrupted. My grandchildren don't have their mother. My son-in-law does not have his wife. My other children don't have their sibling. And I, as a mother, don't have my daughter and grandchild present with me that we had lots of plans around. And I'm glad that you were willing to share. I know this is difficult and we were planning to go another direction. And I appreciate you being willing to take the time to share your story, because we were going to talk about, sharing about Alanique and Ricky, because we were going to talk about your experience, but it still kind of combines one and the same for Black women, because what I'm looking at in your birth story, I'm sorry, they were asking me about the spotlight. Trying to, you try to navigate and have this conversation too.
Okay.
What is you're doing here that is very important in your story is that at the bottom in what I see on I don't know how other people see it, but it's on my left hand, is dismissed as normal trimester occurrences when she was put on steroids and then complained about heart palpitations and feeling faint. And this is a story, sadly, of many Black women that we have lost during pregnancy.
Mhm.
They shared with their provider what was going on and it was dismissed. Or those who have had stillbirths, or those who, who have had losses, whether it was miscarriage or, some other situation, they've, shared that I'm having these issues and they've been dismissed.
Yes.
And that has been the biggest problem and why we have focused a lot of our work. I know, Shantae, you all up in Fresno have done that. And then down in LA, we have the African American Infant and Maternal Mortality Initiative countywide, because we had to discuss, whereas before, a lot of the blame, when I started in Black Infant Health, Sabrina, a lot of the blame was put on, this is the 90s, on Black women, whether they were smoking, whether they were drinking. We were coming out of the drug era, that, the drugs that were dropped into our community.
Yes.
But anyway, we were coming out of that era, and a lot of things were happening that we won't even get into. That'll be a whole nother conversation about forced sterilization or tricking women to come in, for planned, around Planned Parenting, and then giving them a full hysterectomy. Things of that nature that were happening because, you have had too many children and we, the system, don't want to take care of them. But the system was created here for us to be chattel. So it was a time when you didn't mind us having 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 children, because we were performing labor on your behalf and building a nation. So I have to come back to why we have to have these conversations, because the dismissiveness is killing not just Black babies, where we started a lot of this work with Black Infant Health, but we had to add mothers to the conversation, because here in California, Black women are dying 3 to 4 times the rate of white women. Then after they've collected this most recent data, it looks like it's 5 to 6 times. And we don't know what that data will show as a result of COVID, the pandemic. But then we flip back, like when you tell your story, Nia, I'm reminded that when my daughter first had my grandson, and she called, I was here, and she lives out of state, and she called and they said she's having a panic attack. I know I must have had one too, because I picked up the computer, I looked for a flight, and by that evening or next day, within 24 hours, I was there. Because I couldn't have been planned, but I was certain that in a state where she is, where Black women are dying at 10 to 12 times the rate of white women, I was not going to sit that one out.
Right.
And that was 12 years ago. So tell us a little more about what you're doing. Because, I mean, yeah, you have here in your story the implicit bias, the lack of empathy, judged by medical files and not considered human. And then you have, we are not the beast of burden. You want to talk about
that? The not the beast of burden. So what I'm doing and what I have continued to do is the first few years, I just have been really working on just the traumas of us not being heard when we're expressing, the traumas of my situation was, I felt like, and I still feel like it was not an anomaly, but it was given a platform, if not more to say, like, because here in this community, I've been in business for 26 years. I know people. My daughter was in business with me, so we worked side by side together in the salon, and so we knew people and we had created relationships with people, and we have a big family here. And so it just kind of like, it was so big, it caught the attention of so many that in my heart, I knew from the moment I knew what we were going to have to do when they said, hey, you know, after we do, the neurologist does a brain scan, if there's no brain activity, I just went into mode like, okay, I went into a processing mode, like, this is happening right now. Okay, so what am I going to do with this? Because this is either going to make me or break me. And if I can get outside of this hospital and get to the other side of this outside so I can get some air and breathe and I'll fall out and die, I have to do something, because this is too big to just let it go. You know, like, it's just too big to let it go, because somebody has to hear this. Somebody has to know that these things are happening to us, that are happening to our women. My baby had to been in the October, so she might've been 33, 34 weeks or somewhere around there. I went to the doctor and had a thinned out, you know how you know your kid and you just kind of start watching them. I'm watching my child. I watch her. I've studied. I knew her for 26 years. So you know your kid. So you could kind of hear in their voice when they call you, or when if she's sitting with me, I could look in her eyes and tell there's fear there. Something's wrong. Like, what's wrong? Nothing. I'm like, no. She then, well, you know, I'm starting to have heart palpitations. I said, well, tell your doctor. Well, I told him, but, you know, they gave me these new steroids for the baby because my cervix thinned out and it's too thin to put a cerclage in. I'm be on bed rest, but sometime when I walk to the mailbox, my heart palpitates. Well, you going to see your allergist? Tell them. So them not communicating with each other, and me, again, like your kids are grown. And so you tell them what to do, but then your kids watch you muscle through, right? So my kids have watched me, again, survive, because I had another one the other day said, how did you do it as a single mother with 4 children, running a business? All of us had different personalities. And then going through different life things, divorces and all this, how did you do it? And I was just like, I'd be crazy. I said, well, you might think I might be, because all we do is survive, right? So that thing where it's like your kids watch you push through and survive and just not thriving, but just survive through. And so they want to try to be strong too. And it's like, no, I fought this hard fight and I've had to push through certain things so that you don't have to. You have a voice. Advocate. I've learned the lessons through trial and error. You don't have to. I've done these things so that you can have a voice. And so that thing right now, like, you have a voice, speak up, say something. And so I think just kind of like when you tell the doctor something and you're dismissed, you kind of like Sabrina, you said, when you seen your milk sitting there, did you say something? No. Like, because why? What am I going to fight it for? Why am I going to argue? Because they done did it already. But it's like, no, I'm all I got, you know?
Right.
You got to fight. And that's that thing, is just that the advocacy and I make you hear me. My sister's a a registered nurse, BSRN. And she does quality care improvement, and that thing, using your voice, asking those questions, drilling them, so they get irritated. So what?
Right.
So what? And that's my thing. And my kids would do that with me. Mom, no, that's rude. You said that. No, it's not. Advocate, speak up, say something. If something doesn't feel right, if you don't like something, we have to, again, like you said, the chattel slavery, the trauma, it has caused us to shrink and kind of digress and not say anything because, oh, she's an angry Black woman. No, this is my body. I live here. So I don't dismiss me. Don't tell me that it's just this. I feel this. And it's making me afraid that my heart is palpitating. It ain't been doing, and I'm gaining more weight. I didn't gain so much weight. My cervix is thinned out. I'm having all of these issues. Do something. My body is my body. I live here. I do. I live here. I've been living here all my life. You can't tell me that something's not wrong. And so it's just, it's a double-edged sword. It is. It really is, because you're fighting. Now you're fighting for yourself, and then your unborn child, and your family, other women. Yes. Right.
Well, you raised some really critical points for us that we need to explore as a community. One of the things you raised is, I always talk about advocacy, and I will say to anybody, whether pregnant or not, anybody going into these hospital systems should always take somebody with them. I lost a friend, it's been 2 years, from cancer, but we would always go to the hospital with her. So much so that the nurses and doctors would say, well, are you a family member? And they would engage with us, because when they see that you have somebody there that also backs up your situation, your story, that hears for you. Because a lot of times when you go, you don't really hear, especially if you're in a crisis situation. You're trying to get yourself out of that crisis. So some of the things that you might have missed that they're sharing, somebody else can be there to be your advocate. Whether you can take them with you now, we have that challenge, have them on the phone, have them on video. Those are the critical things that we have to look at exploring. And especially during pregnancy, I've also encouraged lots of men to be aware, this is what could happen to your spouse, your partner, your infant, blah, 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 so that these are the outcomes that are happening for Black families. And a lot of people thought this was an old age situation. They don't know it's a new age and current situation that's still happening. The other. So, sister to sister, sisters, because it's all sisters on here. I'm not sure if we have another gentleman or person in the room, but here's what I say. We have to stop the sister survival at the expense of our health and the health of our families. Because even though you're saying, Nia, as a mother, that I just had to power through, and you're telling them to fight and advocate, what they do is they mirror us, right? Mm-hmm. So they keep on saying, well, I just, this is what I have to do. I have that experience with my daughter, and it was like she was sick, and I was like, and my grandson has special needs, and everybody was like, I don't see why she won't go to the hospital. Well, he's nonverbal. She's his voice. If they get separated and she's trying to focus on her healing, and he's somewhere else and she doesn't know what's going on, she is not going to focus on herself and do what's necessary for self, because her mind is going to be on what's going on with him. Now, if his dad could get there in time so that he can tend to him, then we can make sure she's tended to. And it's the same for us. We have to look at taking care of self. I think you shared 2 stories, right? In the story, you shared Alanique and Ricky's story, but you're also sharing your story of being dismissed around your health. Mm-hmm. And how are you navigating and advocating for that? And who helps you to heal and be well?
Well, I'm still working on my healing, and the cathartic process has been the workshops I host. Mm-hmm. With the Hive workshop, we do annually, and due to COVID, we haven't done it, but it's called Beauty from Brokenness, and there's broken glass. And the concept is, you know, something beautiful can come out of something broken, but we go through the whole analogy of you using gloves and sometimes even tweezers, because now when things are broken, they're fragile, but they're sharp and they can hurt you if you don't approach the situation delicately. So it just takes time for you to kind of like hone in on, and just, you know, I tell a story and give a concept, and we just put back together a drawing, something that I have an artist do on a piece of wood, and we put it back together. And let's see if my daughter will bring it in here. And it turns into something beautiful. Last year I did a lotus flower, and how the lotus flower nightly goes down into the dark water, but it trusts the process of the light from the sun coming up to rise up again, pristine and clean. And that thing where I've written the book, Beauty from Brokenness, Lessons Learned in the Storm, and just use every morning. And it's funny, every morning you go to sleep and you trust the process. Tomorrow's going to be another day, because yesterday was hard. And the day before might've been hard. Like the last 2 days, like even before this, you kind of powered up, I guess it is, by shutting down so that I could show up. And so you do that sometimes. It's just like, that's where my self-care, that's the part that I've just like listening to my body, and just like laying there sometime and just like meditating or breathing and focusing in on, like, if I'm having anxiety or if I'm having pain, like, where is this pain coming from? Is it my heart hurting me? Am I sad? Is my brain's the anxiety in my head? What's going on, so that I can show up for the people that I have to show up for. But the self-care has come from having community. And this is where, again, why I continue to show up, because I've met beautiful women that I have never even like been in the room with at this point, except for Kata, and I think I've met Sabrina in person. I don't know if I've met Monica, and of course Shantae, but you have this community of women, and yourself, Audra, where you have these women now, you know that you have a village, somebody powering, pushing for you. Because I did the SB 464. I went down there the day that was passed. We were there. We were.
Wow. I was with the Black Women's Wellness team. Yeah.
Okay, so I was there with Norbisi.
Did you get on the bus?
Yes, I was on the bus.
I was in the front.
Oh my gosh. Okay, it was a bunch of us, but yes, we had come and we went down there to Sacramento, all of that, and just being able to. We have gotten, so like you said, that 400 years, the chattel slavery, the trauma, the lost our voice, lost the fact that we are magic again. Like we know these bodies, like I am one of those women that I know when I'm ovulating. Like right now, I know my ovaries have been angry, and I just started having hot flashes. So I'm like, oh, I think I have a fever. And one of my friends said, no, girl, you're going through menopause. But I'm so in tune where I can feel things, and I know when something's wrong. And when I go to the doctor, I'm like, no, this. And then when they finally, after you fuss at them long enough, because that's what it is, you got to fight. And they're like, well, how did you know? I'm like, or do you have any history? Any medical history? No, but I know my body. Again, that thing. So just knowing that you have this village that's strong women, educated women, fighting for our lives. Basically, we're fighting for our lives, fighting for the lives of these babies. Fighting for the lives, our mental health, our physical health, knowing that is in itself is empowering. And that also is how I, gather strength. But again, the self-care part, writing has been cathartic, but I haven't got a therapist yet. I talked to a couple, but I feel like as a mother, this is something that's really hard to express. Just like no one can tell you about childbirth. You can't explain it to a woman who's never done it. You can't explain burying your child or losing your child to a person that hasn't done it. And so it's just like, what can you tell me that I don't already know, that I've already feel? You can help me process. You could be the sounding board. So I gain my strength by, and I heal also watching other women champion through and have healthy babies, watching other women power up and use their voices, and also learning how to do it in an articulate manner. So I host writing workshops as well, where we write affirmations and believe that shit for real. Like, you know what I mean? Like, not just saying it, but you believe it. You walk in here like, you know, quit with the, we have so much imposter syndrome. Walk in there like, you know, you deserve everything you coming in here asking for. So that's where I'm healing.
Yeah. I agree with that. I agree with that. You know, I've been in a book club for years. That is our sister circle. But then there were points where I realized, you know, I'm losing my mother in my mid-20s and different experiences as raising my sibling and, you know, so much more in this world, you know, navigating the systems of work and career and realizing that, you know, biases and racism can come from within our own community, outside of our community, and so much more. And so as a Black person, people often don't understand how much we're navigating until, like, you know, I don't know why people just really, but it worked. I mean, I don't want to say it worked, but it kind of got people to really take action when our brother George Floyd lost his life. And it was like, I felt like I had been down that road many a time. But I was kind of like really in shock that now the whole world realizes that we ain't been lying, right?
Right.
This stuff is happening. It's real. It has taken its toll on our bodies mentally and physically. But I think that we have a right to equity, right? We have a right to lift our voice and tell our truths, our stories, and be our own advocates and find advocates within our community to stand up in that and support our journey. So that's what we want to do here too. I want to invite the attendees, if they have questions, to drop them in the chat for the panelists. But I ask this question, then I'll bring you all back as we get ready to wrap up our conversation. It's been great. It's hard, so you can't just put this like down to an hour, even like an hour and a half, because it's so much to unpack. But one of the things I will say, I ask you is for yourself, did you find a provider that could help you with your own personal health situation?
As we speak right now, no, I have not.
Okay.
I know that just right now, and because of the pandemic and everything else, and that's another thing, as you advocate, you have to remember, like you say, to take care of yourself. So no, I haven't. And I know that because I know my body, I know the fibroids are back. This has maybe been like 4 years ago that I had them removed and they're back. Been having the pain. 2 years ago, I went to the doctor and had an ultrasound, the same thing. Oh, we have 1 4 centimeter, 1 2 centimeter, but you know, you're getting ready to go through menopause, so the estrogen levels will drop, they'll just go away. I'm like, no, I feel like I'm having a baby every other month. But that same thing, so you just say forget it, right? Again, at this point. So it's that thing. I'm telling you, it's an ongoing battle, because you start to feel like you're being gaslit. Like,
yeah,
you know, you're gaslighting me, like, no, that's not what's happening. I'm like, oh yeah, it is. So do I need to talk to somebody else? And then when you start, you know, and I feel like you're practicing implicitly, you're doing this, and they're like, okay, well, I'll go get somebody. But it's like, I'm sick of y'all. So that thing, just even finding. So now in the light of us having the COVID and everything too, I want to make a gynecology appointment, but they want to keep on the thing. Well, have you had your shot? Do you want to do this? Do you want to do that? And I'm like, listen, I want to come in and I want you to look here. I've dealt with all that other stuff. I want you to deal with the issues that I left on the table the last time I was here.
Not to say this will work, but you can ask in the network, that's that particular network, to see if they have an African-American OB-GYN.
Okay.
That might, you know, have a little bit more knowledge of Black women and fibroids. The other thing is, I do have a sister friend down here who does a womb health series that maybe you guys can partner. But, you know, she's a mother, I think, of 5 or 6, grandmother of several, I forget the number thus far, but she's done real great womb health care and has on her own done the work for the fibroids to I guess when they dissolve, yeah.
Expel them, yeah, get rid of them.
Yeah. So, but it is through, it's a process. I've been through the class with her. I didn't go that route, but some of that we do have to take into consideration what works best for us and our health, because I probably wouldn't have gone the partial hysterectomy route if I had known some of the other things on the other side. I was past, not particularly almost at the end of the childbearing age, but I probably wasn't going to anyway. And so I thought, hey, but when you go back and you think about it, like Monica shared, our womb is sacred, and we want to do all that we can to protect the womb and preserve, as best we can. And we'll have to come back to this, Shantae, Erica, Kata, a conversation around reproductive health and environmental health, and how we look at that intersectionality and the injustices in our community, like you had in your story, Nia, air pollution, the quality, the environmental factors in our community. So we need to explore more. But what I want to do is pin all of these women. Is Lakeisha still here? I want to thank you, Miss White, for, I hope I'm pronouncing your name right, for being here and joining us. I'm going to bring all of my lovely women. And Nia, thank you so much for your transparency. Thank you for sharing your story. We honor you and the work that you're doing. Please be sure, they dropped your book in the chat, but it would be also helpful if folks can find the High Foundation and the work that you're doing. My family members are natives of Fresno. I've had to come up there as many times too growing up. I have aunts still there, and uncles, so I'll have to come check y'all out in the Fresno area real soon. Okay, Kata dropped it in. So, ladies, I want to thank you all. I appreciate what you shared. Monica or Sabrina, you have any questions of Nia? Nia, you have any questions of your sisters? Any thoughts about, kind of all that was shared?
I just want to say it's a pleasure to know that in this arena that we have, you have comrades, you have some sisters here. You have sisters that understand your story. You have sisters that are fighting for one another, and that we can, and also to get rid of that stigma, like us as women, just to be able to express the love. Just, I don't know you, I don't have to ever have seen you, but just, or touched you, but I love you guys. I love your spirit. I love you for showing up. I love your courage. I love where you've been and where you've come to, and you being present at this moment right now for us to collectively come together and, just unite is powerful. And we have to get rid of that stigma that we're not, people don't think we're educated, or they look at us and they think that you just look at a woman and you don't know her story. You don't know, we're all walking books. And so I appreciate your transparency. I appreciate the fears, because that's me. I'm very transparent. I'm protective too. So if I love you, I protect you and I fight for you. And also I'm transparent. I share because if I know something, if it'll help, I want to share it. And so I appreciate the fact that we're all doing the same thing. Ajwa, you. Just being a kind hostess and knowing what questions to ask and keeping it real. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you. It's a heartfelt work. I thank you. You too, as a grandmother. I think we both have so much that can be shared, like with Monica and Sabrina on their journey into motherhood, right? And so we have to have these type of circles and conversations and share, in transparency in our reality. There's so much negative shared on television. It's sad sometimes that we're afraid to talk about what is real, right? This is reality TV, at its finest, this right here. because this is the reality that we need to make some significant changes to these systems of oppression, these racist structures that have long held these, false beliefs about the Black bodies in their science books, in their medical teachings, and, have kept us out of, humane treatment. And so that's, for me, what I'm looking at when I hear your stories, Sabrina and her experience of, hey, it took a lot to pump. There's a lot of women that are just giving up. And if we go back and explore nutrition and breastfeeding for Black women, and and in this nation, and how they push formula after we were no longer slaves and forced to be wet nurses at the expense of our children not being nourished and having to nurse Massa and Mrs. children. But now, when I'm ready to breastfeed my own and pump, you're pushing formula, or you're causing, you're not telling me about, donor milk.
Mhm.
You're not telling me, like Sabrina was saying, she's hip swaying, where I would have liked to be in a position to where I'd be able to have a bit of movement that's not restrictive, because it might have even cut it down. This is for Monica, to 2 hours, a 2-hour labor.
I like that number.
Yes.
or not having to have the epidural, right? And
Mhm.
then come in and you give me a scare tactic of, we're about to do a C-section. Wait a minute now. Everybody's heart rate is about to go up, because that is not my plan. And
Mhm.
please help me to avoid that, because we do know when folks have C-sections and stuff, there's another risk factor, because you have to
Mhm.
take appropriate care of the wound, that folks are not being taught on that wound care, on when to come back if something is not right. There's not enough time being devoted to, women. I won't just say Black women. If you look at it, CDC has a Hear Her campaign. So we have 50,000 near preventable misses, and not deaths, but, complications that could lead to permanent reproductive, health, negative health outcomes for women in our nation that happens annually. And then we have this other situation where, as Black women, the things that we're asked are dismissed, or we're not invited back to come in early. Like, okay, you come in at your 6-week checkup, but maybe you need to come in 2 weeks.
Mhm.
Maybe you need to come in 4 weeks.
And a lot of things,
Mhm.
like, I'm proud that the doulas have been brought back into birthing, the birthing rooms and the birthing conversation,
The work
because
force.
we have done away with the fact that they don't want to deal with the fact that it's Eastern medicine. And if you go back to, like you say, the third world countries, or like even back on Eastern cultures, and their processes, their babies are healthier than ours. Their women are having
Mhm.
babies and not dying in the birthing room, because they're not laying on their back. Of course, my heart rate will go down. You're laying on arteries and everything. They sit up, they squat, and these were native to us as well.
Yeah.
But they westernized our mind and our medicine, because Western medicine is really just practicing. But they want to call what was done by the indigenous witchcraft or wives' tales. No, but this is the thing these people knew, and they kept their customs and they kept their ways, and they took it from us, and they use it on theirs because their babies are living.
They've had the practice of doulas themselves for a long time, right? Where
they took our concepts and used it to bring forth healthy babies, but then they give us
and birthing at home, without
it's not a one size fits all.
Right. And not being over policed because they're birthing at home, and not, getting, having their children come in and be checked. They're not having your children taken from them. And it's like, why is this concept, this over policing of Black bodies and over policing of Black babies? And, these are the things that we have to address, and we can't afford to stay silent. We have to, if we're afraid, or we just want to, not particularly fear, but we just don't want to deal with it, then let's bring some people who will deal with it. So I got some.
Right.
Okay, you know what? I can't talk right now. I'm going to call Shantae. You know, I'm gonna call Nia. You know, y'all get up here, posse up. You know, we would posse up on some foolishness. Now, this is some stuff we have to posse up for.
Right.
So, Monica and Sabrina, I'm sorry, I want you to be able to share. And recently passed legislation, Ms. White, SB 65, California Omnibus Act. Go ahead, Kata, if you can drop that in the chat, that would help. Monica?
Sure. So
What's your takeaway? Oh, come on now. System. She's frozen. Unfreeze.
oh, I'm frozen.
You were.
Okay,
Now come back. Come back.
Okay. So I honestly just wanted to thank all of you women. I learned so much here in this space today, and thinking about all three of our stories, I really look at it from a past, present, and future outlook, where you all have alleviated a lot of the stress I have, but also seeing historically, we still have work to do. And Nia, I think you brought so much wisdom. I appreciate your strength to be able to say, I know what it's like. I've given birth, and to have that tragedy inspire you to say, my voice is needed in the world today, so that people know they are not alone, and we're going to continue this fight. Sabrina, I loved your testimony, because for your first child, and you still maintaining hope and still having enough strength to say, you know, that is my baby's milk over there. This is not my birth plan. I do want a natural birth. And saying how you almost subconsciously didn't recognize that your coworker, you know, who was just there with you the whole time, ended up being another form of support. She, as you said, was like your secondary, the backup doula by default, but knowing that you had a coworker who you could confide in. I just found all of this so helpful, because when I look at the generational elements, you know, something that I had to be strong about, just as I am not a mother and I have never been pregnant. And I will be 37 at the beginning of next year. And by the time I have a child, I will most likely be 38. And I had to get to a point where I told my mom, grandmother, and aunts, please don't continue to ask, when am I going to have kids? Please don't put that pressure on me. If I'm the first one in my family to be an older mom, I take that with pride and grace. And it has never left me. I have wanted to be a mother for as long as I can remember. And I am very adamant that that is still going to happen. That is, quite frankly, my ultimate life goal. And so taking it upon myself to say, I'm willing to be the example for someone who's planned in advance. It has not been an easy journey for any of us. And trauma can come from a variety of spaces. Black women also have a lot of intolerances to lactose. Black women are often anemic, and sometimes our pain and just, you know, kind of cultural health barriers and issues we have are not going to be recognized. I was terrified as an athlete growing up and playing competitively, and I told my doctor very early on, I do not drink milk. What can we do to make sure I am strong in what I'm choosing to do to stay healthy? So I feel like it's great that we all have such a background and bring education to our life experiences, but we do have those moments where we become vulnerable and need help. And all of you have just inspired me so much, and I just appreciate being invited to this space.
Well, we're grateful that you're here, Monica, and definitely welcome you consistently and continuously into this work, into this space. And, you know, we'll definitely send up our prayers for your womb health and care in advance, as, you know, you prepare for the journey into motherhood. And we support, you know, all that you have shared. We don't have to have a particular timeline. You know, for those of us, any of us inclined to, you know, biblical word, some folks that were way up there in age, giving birth, you know, it's just been this modern day age. In some places across the world, folks are still giving birth in their 50s and such.
Yeah.
I think I saw someone with 60 and such. Now, that's not a desire of mine, but again, I welcome those who are interested in still carrying that space into motherhood. And so,
And someone put that in the chat.
yeah,
44, yay.
yeah.
Thank you,
Your
Lakeisha.
journey. Congratulations. Congratulations, Lakeisha. Sabrina, we'll wrap up with you, and then we didn't mean to keep you all this long, but this is our last one for the year, and such that it happened. So Kata, Eric, and Shantae, don't beat me up, but yeah.
We got to go out with a bang. I mean, we made it for the most part through 2021. So
and
we got to go out with a bang.
Yeah.
So I am appreciative and honored to be in this space. I have told my story numerous of times, and probably each time I've probably cried, but they were healthy tears. But I just appreciate the fact that the conversation is being had.
Mm-hmm.
The year that I gave birth, I was given the pleasure to have a conversation that was recorded with Shantae. I think my child was she had just gotten out of the hospital. She wasn't that old. And sat with her to record a conversation. And one of the things that I expressed was the fact that I wanted to make sure that these conversations were normal. We don't talk about our experiences candidly. And most oftentimes we don't find out about another woman's experience until we're in the throes of our own. And like, I didn't know that I was born premature. I found out while I was pregnant with my child.
Yeah.
So, and I'm like, that would have been lovely to know before I got pregnant.
Right.
I could have told my doctor that. So, but yes, or even just the experience of having an adverse birth outcome, or even a healthy birth outcome. We don't have those conversations. We talk about the fact that such and such in our family has high blood pressure, diabetes, has cancer, and all these things. But when it comes to our birth outcomes, it's hush hush.
Mm-hmm.
And it doesn't come out until another bad birth outcome happens. But no, this is information that we need to, discuss, because it can prepare our women or birthing people for their own journey, so they'll know how to advocate, what to ask for, what to look out for, because some of these things can be genetic. Some of these things can be passed down. So having as much information as possible can help us on our own journey. Being that voice for someone else who could be going through their own situation. And that's the reason why I make it a point that when I talk with women in our program, even if everything is going well, let's talk about what could not, because I want you to be prepared just in case it does happen.
Right.
Because I wasn't prepared. If it wasn't for the fact of what I've done, what I do professionally, like I said, who knows what my outcome could have been from then forth. It was already bad enough that I was having a preterm birth. But I mean, my story could have been that neither one of us made it, or one of us versus the other made it. So, having the ability to help them through their journey if they happen to have a preterm birth, being able to not only show up for their baby, and have the support behind them as they're showing up for their child, but to, have the ability to make sure that their medical team is giving them the best support possible as well, and knowing what to ask for. So, I mean, oftentimes when we're, dealing with babies that are in the NICU, it's a foreign experience. And that's the reason why I named it that, because it's a foreign experience for many. They weren't expecting that to be the outcome. And now here they are, and they have to navigate in that space. And having someone who's been through it helps to reassure them, and helps to provide them with the information they need to make sure that they're being supported fully.
Right.
So I'm just grateful to be here and honored enough to have this conversation with you all. And I hope, and I know they will continue.
Yeah.
I just hope I can definitely be a part of it.
Absolutely, absolutely. We will have to make that happen. Ladies, again, I really want to thank you for entrusting me with facilitating this conversation and your stories, sharing your stories with the Black Wellness and Prosperity Center that could be shared broadly, not just locally to Fresno, but across not just California, but throughout our nation as we post and share this webinar. And with all those, we thank our attendees, our special guests for being on the panel, and then those of you who have taken the time to stick with us this hour and 45 minutes just about. But I'm ever grateful. I really want to applaud you and lift you up as my sisters, and just let you know that the journey does not stop here for us, because we have to keep these stories going. Oh, what a beautiful, beautiful picture. Sabrina, beautiful picture. You can't just pop that in there like that. You got to drop that in so we can see you in destiny. That's a beautiful mother-daughter picture. And we will continue this journey. We will talk with all of our partners about this and see how do we explore this into 2022. Oh, goodness, 2022. And so again, just thank you. You are appreciated. You are loved. You are supported. We honor you and all that you have experienced, all that your family has experienced, and we look forward to continuing to share this and highlight this so others can know this has been our story, but this is not where it ends. It is going to be a change. And we have to keep this going in order to make sure that that change can happen. So I'm again excited. I'm just really well pleased with how we have wrapped this all up to have you here. I've almost been 12 hours into Zoom meetings and calls today, but this was my highlight. This has really been my highlight of my highlight. My highlight. So I want to thank you, Nia Hodge. I want to thank you, Monica Nelson. I want to thank you, Sabrina Beavers, for being here. Ashanti just dropped in the chat, powerful stories, and thank you for sharing. So again, Kata, do we have something that we need to put up and share? I thank our partners. I thank the Black Doula Consortium, because this lets us know that there's more work that we as doulas have to do. I am a doula, but I'm more of a doula advocate, and I'm excited to be that advocate. I want you all to know that I want to thank my colleagues, Kefri Riley of Frontline Doulas, Lee Purry of Blue Shield of California, who has been our biggest sponsor for this work. Kenya, I don't want to pronounce that wrong, Fadimi, I believe. I've done that before. I met Kenya from Her Health First. Ooh, our superstar Shantae Davies Balch,
Yes.
Black Wellness and Prosperity Center up in Fresno. Oh, our sister friend who has moved on and is with the NBA, Kendra Montgomery Block, who really made this happen, brought this partnership together. Myself representing LA County and representing myself as a Black maternal health and infant health advocate and public health leader. Just to go back over, we were grateful for our first event in July. Well, actually, I think we had one in June, but July was our groundbreaking work and conversation with Onyema Obieka from Black Women for Wellness, who works on their action project, who's done a lot of work around SB 464 and SB 65, along with Norbese from Norbese Nana Flint from Black Women for Wellness, who was out at the time on maternity leave, but has since had her young, beautiful Black baby boy. We want to thank Anna King, who represented from Maternal Mental Health Now for our Black maternal mental health conversation, as well as Dr. Alexandra for a team from California Health Collaborative. In September, we went on with a great conversations on screenings and during and after pregnancy. You have to go back and see that conversation. Each and every one of these were excellent. But the conversation with Chantel Reynolds and Dr. Valencia P. Walker, who I love to pieces, really set this atmosphere. That's when we switched to a kind of like conversational atmosphere. And then we had a conversation with Chanel Gibbs on loss and grief, losing your baby, whose baby right now, her name escapes me, but her baby she lost, and she met me in March of 2020 as she had just experienced the loss of her mighty little angel. And she came in and just jumped into this work, and it's led her to some great work to help and support other moms who've experienced loss of their infants. And she had gone through her NICU experience, and she's a writer and producer. Then November, we had a great conversation on Black preterm birth with my colleague, Mashariki Kudumu of Marcha Dimes, and Jessica M. Wade, who is now not only with Mighty Little Giants, she's founded, but she is representing San Diego County for Marcha Dimes. So you guys look out for her. And finally, this is us, December, with Monica Nelson, Nia Hodge, and Sabrina Beavers. Monica Nelson as a community health advocate, Sabrina Beavers, health education specialist with the Black Infant Health Program, Nia Hodge, mother, grandmother, public health advocate, and founder of the High Foundation. So again, it has been our pleasure for the Black Wellness and Prosperity Center, Black Child Legacy Campaign, Blue Shield of California, Diversity Uplift, Frontline Doulas, Her Health First, and the Center at Sierra Health Foundation, and myself to bring you these great series and webinar, and we look forward to seeing you all in 2022. Please don't leave us out. Drop your stories. If you need us, you want to stay in contact with us, drop your emails in the chat, and we want to keep up with you. Please, Kata has listed the website for the Black Wellness and Prosperity Center. We still have more stories that need to be told. You can reach out to me. We still are working on our documentary for Black birthing. And so doing a project and have been with the Black Women for Wellness Project. So you might want to engage and share your story there as well. And so with that being said, happy holidays. I'll tell you Merry Christmas, Happy Kwanzaa, Happy New Year, and all those great holidays and events that you might be celebrating with your family. Stay safe, you all. Please stay safe. Do your best to also work on your immunity, work on your health, self-care,
Amen.
Self-care.
Yes.
And just continue to share in love. Let your friends and family members know how much you love them. Reach out to someone who may be in need. Reach out and support someone, especially if you know someone who's had or going through their own COVID experience. Maybe just drop off food to them, give them a call, be a support, and encourage them through the journey. And let's pray that we get through this and come out even greater on the other side.
All right, amen. It's been a pleasure. Take care.
All right. Thank you all. I think we're just going to first stop the recording and then